Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first installment and our first episode ever of Cerebral Sparkles. Hi,
Welcome.
welcome. All right, welcome to Cerebral Sparkles, where we explore the intersection of quantum energy and holistic mental health. I'm Robin, a holistic mental wellness facilitator, and I'm here with
Jody, and I am a Reiki master and a life coach.
Yay! And together, we're diving into how emotional wellness connects to both energetic and practical aspects of well-being. Yay! Okay, so in this episode, we're going to explore how emotions not only shape our thoughts and behaviors, but also create energy patterns within the body. And whether you're on your recovery journey or you're just looking to deepen your emotional awareness, or even just curious about how to align your emotions with energy, this podcast is for you.
Yay!
Yeah. Oh, that's so pleasant. Thank you, Jody. You're so cute.
Welcome.
All right. So let's start off. Well, first of all, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Um, you make up the quantum Reiki portion. And so, yeah, tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Well, I like to blend Reiki energy and sound healing, and I feel like they're really similar. And based on the quantum science, which tells us that everything is energy, and looking at everything as energy, that I feel like Reiki itself is similar to sound in that what sound does is it creates frequencies that resonate with the body for us to heal and release. That energy, that Reiki uses energy to do the same thing of bringing our body into resonance and helping us release. So we'll go deeper into that later, but I wanted just to share a little bit that I am a recovering stress case
Yay! Yeah.
survivor, that I spent so much of my life running on survival mode,
Mm,
like so many of us do in a
yeah.
chronic stress state. That, when we learn that we've got to be all about productivity to
Mm,
survive,
burnout.
yeah, that it leads to burnout, and that I became really disconnected from my body. And then when adrenal fatigue showed up, and then chronic illness and autoimmune disorders showed up, then I would try to treat the problem,
Mm,
individually, but yet the root of it was the way that I was the way that I was living, the way that I
mm,
was thinking,
mhm,
the way that I was connected to my own body and my energy system.
mm,
And so this has really been a journey of my own healing and learning
mm.
that understanding energy and learning how to connect to my body, learning how to feel what I'm feeling, to be aware. Then I can utilize these practices to release, to heal myself, and then also consciously choose what I want to experience. So I feel like this path is really great for healing, and it's also so empowering because it gives us our power back to be aware of how we're interacting in the world and to be more conscious of it so that we can support others, so that we can be intentional with what we do, with our
Yes.
energy and in our lives. So I'm so grateful for the journey.
Yes, I love this. And this is a perfect reason why we're having these conversations because all of that is so deep and it's intertwined into your wellness, your mental wellness, your all the different wellnesses, right? So thank you, Jody. I love that
Mhm.
we get to do this
Yeah,
together.
thank you. Yeah, do you want to share a little bit about
Yep.
what
Me, what
brought
I
you
do,
here?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm the holistic mental health side of it. I actually I'm almost done and I'm getting my master's in social work, but mental health and trauma. And for the past 2.5 years, I have worked teaching holistic mental health to youth and teens. And then I chose to embody that as well. And so SAMHSA, which stands for, I have it down here. SAMHSA stands for where we go? Oh, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So they came out with, so part of the government came out with the 8 dimensions of wellness. And so this is, when I say holistic, I'm always talking about the areas of wellness. I also have added two of mine. So you're going to see within within our installments that we come in with, it's going to be 10 areas of wellness. And so for me, it's really important. Balancing your mental health is more than just, going to the gym. It's more than just, reading a book. It's more than just, liking your job. There's different categories. And so that's what I really focus in. So if you do like little pieces in all the different categories, it will eventually lead to a more sustainable way of being. And so that's my big focus. So,
I love it that you're really bringing a holistic approach to it.
mhm,
And I think that's really where we come together in our practices, that
mhm.
it is a combination of taking care of the physical aspects of it, the mental, the emotional, and how they all work together, that
Yes.
in balance, that if we're just doing the things, and that was part of my stress, for a while is I thought, well, if I exercise and I eat healthy and I have, positive thoughts. And so I was running and running and running, trying to do all the things.
Hmm.
And yet there's a big piece of it, this whole other side of it that is about listening and being. And as we were talking about earlier, that we share in integrating
Yes,
how to
integration.
pull it all together, that as we do these things, that holistic approach of seeing how everything impacts everything else.
Yeah, it's like a
And
big Venn diagram, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
and then we can really embody it.
Yes, embodying it. So, just a little overview of the dimensions or areas of wellness: emotional, social, inner. We have intellectual, we have environmental, we have financial, occupational. I've added cultural, and I've also added technology wellness. I feel like there might be one that I'm missing, but as the overview of that, those are all the things that I'm definitely going to be talking about. I
Mhm.
have goals in all of them, so I'm sure that that will be my 2025 goal. So I'm sure that will come up. It's in conversation at
Yeah.
some point.
That's
Yeah.
what's fun is we have our own process that we're going through, and then we get to
Mhm.
share it with you while we're in process, seeing
Yes.
how these things impact overall health because they're
Mhm.
all a part of it. They're all
Exactly.
a piece of it. If you're juggling all these balls and a few of them start to drop, it's easy
Yeah.
to drop them all. Where if we're covering
Yeah,
and
all the
balancing,
bases.
yeah.
And I tell you what, it's like a safety net, because if you are like putting little seeds in all the different categories, when
Mm,
your emotional wellness is off, like your just emotions are everywhere, you know what? It's not like you're like starting from scratch, because maybe you naturally go to nature every morning. So you go for a walk. Maybe then you listen to a book while you're in nature. So you got some intellectual wellness in there. Maybe you go talk to a friend. You got some
yeah.
social wellness in there. So it's a really good place to start, especially if you just feel overwhelmed with life, which many of us do. Yeah.
Well, it makes it so tangible because I think
Mhm.
for a lot of us, we consider maybe our emotional wellness, we consider it self-care and we can put it in a
Mhm.
box of, okay, this week I went and spent 1 hour doing this thing and that was my self-care time. And then the rest of the time we're running on adrenaline and we're going back into our patterns. So by breaking it up into these different categories, we get to see how to make self-care a way of life.
Yes, and it's
Applies to all
yes.
these areas.
Because I'll be honest, there's also a stigma with even the word self-care. Sometimes some people just tune out. And so that's also something that is important. We're going to be also trying to break stigmas with these conversations. Like,
Mhm.
the holistic world being not practical for everyday life, which is just so far from the truth,
Mhm.
right? We need to start looking inward and being able to
Yeah.
self-source versus just relying on everything outside of us?
Right, kind of bridging the gap. The
Yes.
energy medicine and Reiki, it's not woo, it's how we function in the world.
Especially daily life.
Yeah, how
Hmm.
we support our bodies. It's a way of being, it's a way of processing, and it's natural. That kind of demystifying spirituality, which is really how we interact with our world and with ourselves in an authentic, connected way. So I love
Oh,
that we're going to
love it.
bring it down to earth
Yes.
and make it applicable to
Hmm.
technology, I mean, to all these different
All the
aspects
things.
of life. So that is something that yet we can embody as a practice.
Yay. Okay, so I'm so excited. So, what we definitely wanted to do to start off, just to kind of set a really nice tone, um, we want to give each other compliments so that
Mhm.
we can just set the tone. It's beautiful to be around people that, you know, raise your energy and give you energy and don't drain you, right? So when you find those people, tell them, right? Because that's social wellness. So
Right.
wait, let me begin. Joking. Okay, so I just remember the first time that I met you, and I just wanted to say that like the way that my compliment is the way that you show up
Mhm.
is it's undeniably energetic, it's present, it is and it's approachable. Like I never feel scared. I feel like I always want to just interact with you. And let me tell you, folks, I ran 6 miles after I hung out with her the first time, and that's not a thing. So that's how much energy she gave me. So anyway, so thank you for existing and being so present every time we hang out.
Oh, thank you. I love you that you said that because these are things I value, and that's exactly how I feel about you.
Yay.
It's amazing. Your energy just brightens me up. It just makes me feel like I feel alive and I feel seen and I feel heard. And you do have a way of connecting with anybody where they're at, that you can look right through them and say, "Hey, I see you." And you're okay and I'm here for it. That presence and energy is definitely your gift too, and making it fun and relatable to bring humor into life, into spaces that are challenging, that you create such a deep sense of safety and relatability. And I know that it's a reflection of where you've been willing to go. Like I just feel, oh, you can hold me, you can hold this, and you're here for it. And it just feels safe in wherever our journey takes us. And so thank you so much for being you and being the bright, authentic, like authenticity light
Yay!
that you are from your heart.
Thank you
You.
so much. Oh, see the tone that set? Oh my God. I was like, oh, it feels so nice.
Aw.
So thank you. I think that compliments, that's definitely something that if you're having a bad day, give someone a compliment. I feel like that's one of the fastest ways to kind of show yourself love as well, because it's like you're holding space and energetic space to acknowledge someone else, and it kind of takes your mind out of your own stuff for a minute and gets you to focus on something positive. So it's a really beautiful
I
thing.
love it. It feels just as good to share as it is to receive. It
Yes.
felt great.
Okay,
Thank you.
so let's start. So I have an opening question to just kind of get everybody thinking about things. All right. It is. Well, first of all, I'm going to read you a little something that I put together just on why we're merging mental health and quantum energy work, right? Okay, so mental health and energy work, they've always kind of lived in separate spaces, but they're pretty much the same conversation, right? They're two sides of the same coin. In traditional mental health, we use tools to understand and regulate emotions, while energy work usually helps us to move and release stuck emotions, right?
Hmm.
So when we bring the two together, we're not just thinking about emotions, we're feeling them, we're shifting them, we're transforming them. And so it's not about picking one over the other, it's about bridging the gap like we talked about before. This is very much about bridging the gap. Whether you lean more towards psychology or you feel connected to energy healing, this fusion that we're going to be doing here is just going to kind of give you a fuller and more complete look at how we process emotions and then clear out anything that's weighing you down and then align both your inner world and then the way that you show up in life. So
Hmm.
these are our motivations for why we're even doing this.
Love it.
All
Well
right.
said.
So now the first question. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice about emotions, either from a mental health perspective or an energy perspective, what would it be?
Ooh, that is a great question. I I think that the perspective I would give myself would be, because, raised from a religious perspective, so much of that
Mm.
was kind of centered around judgment, right? Guilt and shame of you should feel bad that you have done something wrong. And if you feel bad, that's going to motivate you to do better. And I've realized it's the opposite. What I would tell my younger self is love and compassion is acceptance of what I'm feeling. Instead of judging it, allowing it, being it because you're feeling it. And what you resist persists. And so if I try to resist, I was younger, I wanted to, I'd work so hard to prove that I was okay when I didn't feel okay,
Oh
right?
God,
We
yeah.
we we try, we put all this effort into trying to convince ourselves and others,
Masks.
yeah, that what we're feeling isn't real. And instead, if we just go right to that feeling and go, yeah, this is what I'm feeling. It's okay for me to feel this because I am. And then that allows us to connect and then allows the emotion to move. So I would say radical acceptance of everything I'm feeling, because that's an act of love. And
Mm,
love
mhm,
coming into energy work makes energy flow.
mm.
And then those emotions would have been released. Whereas my younger self, every time I said I shouldn't feel that way, or I don't want to feel that way, and I resisted it, it stayed stuck because I couldn't connect to it. And then that's created more work now that life could have just been so much easier to just feel it in the moment. So radical acceptance of what we feel.
I love that. I love that. That's deep. Yes. If I was talking to my younger self, I would probably say, you're going to have to feel it in order to release it.
Mm.
There's no way around it. Emotions are your own journey. Like emotions are definitely like waves. Somebody said to me, just lie down until the feeling goes away. Right? That's kind of what it is, right? Because this is literally what it is. I mean, we just had Valentine's Day the other day, and I think that like love, that emotion, it definitely can blindside you. It can take over logic. It can take, so just understanding that emotions are felt and you have to feel them. It doesn't matter if you disconnect from them for years. It doesn't matter. In order for you to get through an emotion, you're going to have to feel it in order to release it. So it's okay to cry. It's okay to however you release emotions is okay. I'm actually, my emotional wellness goal for this year is I am watching movies that evoke emotion out of me. And then I created some questions to ask myself after the movie. And so mainly I'm picking movies that will make me cry. Because I don't tend to like watch movies that make me cry. I'm usually into, because when I watch TV, I kind of want it to be an escape, like not too like cerebral.
Yeah,
uh, but
not more of
yeah,
what
I'm
you're
not
already
more of what we're all
experiencing in life,
exactly
not
right.
more of reality.
But it's actually kind of fun. Like I watched a movie the other day about it was just this family with an autistic kid, and I realized that like me crying is also me expressing like a profound sense of watching other people love. Like I get
Mm.
so like it's like my body's so small, but I have so much like emotion that it doesn't know what to do. So the only thing it can do is just like cry. So like so
What a great
yeah,
release. Yeah.
I mean, and it was so good. I
It's a
I
great
tell you,
channel for,
yeah.
yeah.
I was like, okay, so let me go ahead and watch this movie. And then I was like, do I really want to watch this movie? Because I wasn't sure if I was into it. 5 minutes in, I'm already crying. And I was like, well, all right, we're already here. But it's the emotional releases, which is good.
I love what you're saying so much because makes me want to take it to this quantum place of,
Mm,
that you said we have to feel everything. Everything originates inside of us.
mhm,
So doesn't everything outside of us serve a purpose like this big movie, like watching a TV show? And we personalize it, and
mhm.
that's when we feel it.
Mm,
Right. And
mhm,
so that's why we create and we live these scenarios that are reflections of what we're feeling. We magnetize, like in the quantum world, it's resonance. So we're going to magnetize so that we can release these emotions. That if
mhm,
you look at that perspective of everything is happening for me, like just like a TV show that's helping me release my emotions, if we were to
mhm.
look at that way of, oh, okay, what am I seeing, experiencing? What is that bringing up in me? And how can I look at it and release it?
Ah,
Just like a TV show,
yes.
then because it's when we personalize what we're seeing and we hold on to it, we make
Hmm.
it our own, that it
Yeah.
stays stuck. So that just
Hmm.
made me think of
Yeah.
taking it to this quantum perspective of that's kind of the way that our bodies function and the way
Hmm.
healing works is things are arise in our
Yeah.
surroundings to draw up exactly what's been hidden so that we
Mm,
can feel it. Because
yeah.
if we don't feel it,
It's
it's
going to keep
stuck.
coming back. It's like the lessons, they're going to have different faces, but it's the same lesson, right? I was
Yeah.
actually thinking about when you were talking about that, what happens if life is meaningless? Everything is meaningless and and situations happen and then we give it meaning, right? And then we give it meaning and then before you know it, that's a whole story. And then we have this story that then also comes with us. And so
Yeah.
depending on what part you play in the story, can really affect how you navigate this life, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like like our emotions, can flow through us. And in our body, and our energy body is like a river, and things are going to move through, and we feel the emotions. It's like sending a little boat down the river, right? And
Yes.
it can all flow out, everything can move through us. But when we create a story about it and
Hmm.
we're personalizing
Yeah.
it,
Or the victim. Yeah.
or the victim, or holding on it, we've just changed that thing. Like we've
Hmm.
changed the vibration, we've turned it into something else, and it's like clogging up our river,
Hmm.
right? And then it's stuck and we can't connect to it, and it can't just move out.
Yes.
And so that's why all of these tools are so helpful, like you
Hmm.
said, to feel what we're feeling. It just helps it flow right out, clear it out again.
Yeah. And just to be said too, like emotions don't always have to be happy. Like I feel like sometimes we think that something's really wrong if like we're sad sometimes or like the whole
Mm,
spectrum of emotions. But I mean, like that's a part of life. Like in order for you to understand what true happiness is, you have to experience sadness. In order, like you have to experience both of the duality of it, right? Because it makes
right.
you appreciate one versus the other. That's why, like, I think about this a lot. I've being on the planet for quite some time now. I realized that like, we go through life trying to avoid traumatic things, right? Because obviously trauma is terrible. But one of the silver linings of when bad things happen is that you get to understand what that feels like. So now you've developed a compassion, you developed an understanding, you've dropped into a little bit of a deeper perspective of what this life actually looks like what reality actually means.
Mhm.
And so I mean I've noticed at my age that when I interact with people who maybe manage to skirt around traumatic things like in childhood and stuff, it's hard for me to have conversations with them because they just remain very surface. And it's not anything bad. It's
Mm.
just they haven't experienced enough things to be able to like drop in a little bit to how this reality
It's
functions.
so true. That reminds me of my one of my favorite quotes about wisdom, that
Mm.
wisdom is experience without attached emotion. So
Oh,
we experience something and we feel the emotion and it moves through us, it flows through us. What we're left with is this awareness. And it's awareness for future situations that, like you said, give us greater depth, and it's
yes.
beneficial. And, taking it to a quantum space, that the way, looking at polarity and the way that energy moves through the world, that everything is moving through two energies. There's the energy of breaking things down, of entropy,
Mm-hmm.
and the energy of creating something new. And we need that.
Mm-hmm.
And that cycle is happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we're interpreting emotions are sensations of our body, and
Mm.
how we're processing information
Energy and
experience.
motion.
Energy and motion, exactly. And it's not necessarily a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you've just completed a project and
Yeah.
you let it go, then what if that there's this recovery period where you're replenishing yourself. It's like the winter where leaves fall and things
Mm-hmm.
slow down, and we don't judge the process. We don't judge entropy when it happens in nature. And yet maybe we're interpreting it as, sadness or depression, and it's really the process of us being empty of our energy that's cleared
Mm-hmm.
out, and then it's going to replenish again, and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay for that to happen. So when we're not making judgment of it, that we can recognize there's going to be this cycle of down low
Mm-hmm.
moments, and then high moments, and the joy. And when we don't resist and it flows, the
Yes.
emotions don't need to stay stuck, and all of it is information that empowers us. As we
Mm.
don't attach the emotion, we have this wisdom to go, oh, do I want to experience that again?
Yeah.
Do I want to create something new?
I've said that's like one of the biggest motivators is, I mean, like even people like in recovery or addiction, it's like many times people change because they're tired of being tired, you know?
Yeah,
And like that's
right,
so for real. You're like,
right.
okay, all I know is that I don't like that.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, what do I do? And I'll just tell you right away, if you ever don't like something in your life, the beautiful thing about this lifetime is that we can change it, but change is hard. Change is not for the weak. But I will tell you, if you don't like something in your life, do the exact opposite. You can't help but change. So if you hate the fact that you are, I don't know, maybe you're gaining weight and you're just like upset about it, you don't know what to do. Maybe do the opposite. Whatever you're doing, if you're sleeping for like extra time, maybe instead of sleeping, you go outside and you spend that time outside. Whatever it is, do the opposite, and you can't help but change.
Mhm.
That's like the first
That's
step.
so true. And we see things as an empowering way that the control isn't outside of us, that it's all inside of us. Then everything we experience emotionally, whether it's favorable or not, is all showing us alignment to get to know ourselves better.
Yeah,
Is this, and it's all information that's so
all
beneficial.
information.
Okay, I want more of that. All right, I want less of that. That it's
Mhm.
steering us in this direction to so that we can make conscious choices to
Yes.
what we want.
Yes. I love this. And when you were saying the definition of wisdom, I actually heard another definition of wisdom the other day too. This goes well, that you learn from outside of yourself, but when you learn from inside of yourself, it's wisdom. So
Oh,
like,
I
yeah.
like
So
that.
when you're taught from outside, you learn. When you're taught from the inside, you have wisdom. So yeah.
I love it. Well, like everything out there is like a big Amazon catalog of how does this make me feel? Do I want that?
Mhm.
Nope. Okay, well then now I'm clear on not wanting that.
Yeah.
And then feel good. Oh, do I want that?
Isn't that like a Mary
Okay.
Kondo thing? Like that woman that was going around and clean and helping people organize their life. I think that was one of her things where like she would have you look at an item and go, like, how does this make you feel? And if it wasn't something that like made you feel something positive, you just get rid of it. I could have made that up, but I
Oh,
think that that's kind of like
that
the
sounds
idea,
right. Yeah.
like but that it's very true. It's like you can choose, and I mean this might be a controversial thing, but I do have to say that it is your responsibility to find joy in your life. It is nobody's responsibility to entertain you or to like make your life joyful. It is your responsibility, and like it's very easy to get stuck in these cycles where you wake up every day and it's terrible, but like there's also just as there's terrible stuff, there's so many positive things. You just have to look for it. And sometimes it's hard to find,
It's where we're putting our energy.
Booms.
I think you said it once of paying attention is actually paying your energy to something.
Mm.
And whatever we focus on is going to amplify. And it's important
Mhm.
understanding that the way energy works. So are we feeling something we want to amplify
Mhm.
or something we want to shift? And so it is this combination of feeling it so we're connecting to it.
Yes.
And then once we're connected to it, and I think of it as sound or as resonance, then where do we want to take that energy?
Mhm.
What do we want to put that energy to? And it feels so much more empowering
Mhm.
to see it that way, to recognize that no one can really make us feel anything because what we feel
Mhm.
is the response from our body,
Yeah, because
right?
that's
How it's interpreting
yeah,
what we're experiencing
yeah.
energetically.
And like I mean, I always think about like, when there'll be a bunch of people that are all watching the same scenario happen, but you have all these different perspectives of the same scenario. And that's what it is. It's like
Yeah.
we give the meaning to it. Like and if you see something and it might trigger something from your childhood, so you're going to see it in this lens that, the person next to you might not be seeing because they don't have that connection, right?
That's such a good point that
Mhm.
if we can feel something different from
Mhm.
this from the same situation,
Mhm.
then that can only mean that it's coming from inside of us
Mhm.
and that we're only going to receive what we believe and what we allow. And even feeling love is the amount of love that we believe that we can receive
Yeah.
for ourselves. And that's what you'd mentioned before about self-sourcing. And I'm
Yes,
so
self-sourcing.
excited to
Yes.
dive deeper
Yeah.
into this.
Yeah. So we could talk forever for this. So we're gonna dive into some questions to kind of get everybody on the same page in terms of, energy and mental health. Okay, so I have some questions for you. So you'll
Okay.
start. How do emotions show up in the body from an energy perspective?
Oh, I love this question.
Yay!
You said that. Well, looking at energy, that energy it's waves of light that are in motion, and everything is moving at a different vibration, a different frequency. And our bodies, our organs, our systems have their own resonance and vibration that we would consider harmonization. Like if you think of an orchestra, all of the instruments are playing in tune and they're playing together to blend this symphony. Well, if there's a sound that isn't resonant, then it can't connect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we think of it that way, then when we have an emotion, and okay, so your body is vibrating in harmony, which really our natural state is love. And we know this because when we're feeling love, you feel more energy.
Hmm.
That it's literally this energy that's flowing through you. And when we're in a deep state of love, like when you're in the pure, like early in a relationship, this pure flow of love, you're not thinking, what am I getting back? Like it's just this action. It's just this
Hmm.
thing that moves through you
Hmm.
as love, as being our natural state, being an open flow. So it's going to be a high vibration. So you have a vibration that's vibrating very, very quickly. And then you bring in, a lower vibration. If it's judgment, there's not a connection there. So think of it as these interference patterns that are happening, and they can
Hmm.
be blocks where there's this discordance where it's not flowing in the body. And in energy medicine, looking at it too, of all emotions have, so it has their lower vibration and then their higher vibration,
Hmm.
right, on this strand. So maybe the lower end of vibration might be sadness, and then as you move up in the vibration, it's joy. And
Hmm.
so the beauty of it, looking at it this way, is that if we want to shift our emotions, then it does become this combination of creating resonance, meaning connecting consciously to that emotion of sadness, of where it's at in the body. And we can get good at hiding it and
Hmm.
keeping it stuck because
Especially as
we,
you get older, for sure.
yeah, we don't want to feel it. We resist it and it
Hmm.
stays in there. But if we can connect to that feeling and feel it, once we're connected to it, then we can shift that resonance through energy. We can take it up to this higher vibration of joy.
Hmm.
So I think of it sometimes, instead of it thinking as there's something wrong, and we
Hmm.
need to change something, it's more of we need to bring these vibrations of
Hmm.
emotion from a lower vibration to a higher vibration.
Hmm.
Or in other words, am I blocked? So if it's something low, you could also say I can't access joy,
Hmm.
right? That
Hmm.
this lower vibration of sadness, it's a block where you're not able to connect to and flow joy because there isn't resonance,
Mm, this
right?
is so interesting. I love these because I learn too, right? Because
Mhm.
you know, I work more in like the mental health space. So sometimes it feels like you're kind of stuck in boxes somewhat. So I love that this is part of the conversation and connecting it. Like you already started connecting it, and
Mhm.
so I'm going to piggyback off of this, talking about from a mental health perspective and emotions, right? Like one of the best things that you can do for yourself is identify where you're feeling things in your body,
Mm.
right? So, like, first of all, your body keeps you in the present moment. It's the safest place to be, okay? They have this phrase where they say if you're stuck in the past, that's where depression lives. When you're too focused on the future, that's where anxiety lives. And so the present moment is the safest place to be. But like so example, if you like, let's say you suffer from panic attacks, right? What I usually would suggest is paying attention to like when you get triggered or like when you get upset, where do you feel it in your body? Okay, this is the roadmap. Since your body keeps you in the present moment, your body's going to give you all the tells, right? So like Jody, when you get upset about something, where do you feel it in your body first?
Ooh, I love that you said that. I feel like it really depends on the emotion of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes from Chinese medicine. And I love that energy has these ancient roots that,
Mm-hmm.
in Indian culture, we have our chakras, we have our energy centers, which now we know are bundles of nerves
Yes.
biologically,
Mm-hmm.
and that they are the main communication centers for that part of the body. So that's where emotions will get stuck and they'll lock up in one of these areas. And they found, because of the way emotions vibrate, that certain emotions can get stuck in different areas. So
Mm-hmm.
Chinese medicine talks about the meridians, are energetic pathways that carry these emotions. So for example, um, anger gets stuck, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in well, I mean, it can get stuck in the heart,
Mm-hmm.
lungs. Grief can get stuck there. Um, Sadness, I find when it's something about the heart where I feel hurt or judged, then
Mm-hmm.
then they'll lock up there. If I feel fear, I mean, our safety,
Mm-hmm.
sense of safety is related to our sacral and our
Mm-hmm.
root. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'll get a knot in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
If there's this fear of expressing myself, I'll get kind of a lump in my throat.
Mm-hmm.
If resisting something, that it's just amazing that I'll feel it in my body at one of those energy centers, and that there's science that talks about that. And that's part of really they're all stress responses. Like if
Mm,
I could explain what I was saying about emotion, another way is when we're feeling a low vibration, it's stress on the body. Like
mm,
thinking about
hmm.
pressure. All right, if when you
Yeah.
have, a river that's flowing, that's trying to flow this, and then you have stagnancy, right? Like things
Hmm.
blocking the river, there's going to be more pressure to try to get through to communicate with the body, and it's
Hmm.
constriction, and it's
Yeah.
and it's actually
Strict.
preventing the communication, so it's stress, and the
Mm,
body is using so much energy to try to break through that. So if you think
mm,
about
mm,
why you feel so tired when we're holding these pockets of density
mm,
of energy in the body, it's stress, and so the body is, it's the stress response, and if you have
hmm,
enough of these, we can kind of stay
hmm.
in a chronic stress
Well, and
response.
I was just going to say, like over time. So, like when you're younger, you might get stressed out when like somebody, if you have to like publicly speak, right? But let's say you never really work through that, and or you avoid it, right? Because most avoidance leads to anxiety. Like I think that that's like one of the main things of anxiety is like you're just trying to avoid everything.
Uh-huh.
But what was I going to say? So, what were you just saying?
Yeah. Oh, anger's in the liver.
Anger
I
is it? Oh
spoke
yeah,
against the
anger is
liver.
definitely in the
Yeah,
liver.
spoke though. But so anyway, when we're in stress, automatically, and bringing science into it,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to activate our sympathetic nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
because stress, it is going to react to an external threat just like an internal threat. And
Mm-hmm.
so internally, there's this dissonance that's happening where
Mm-hmm.
things aren't connecting, and it's creating stress, and we have this constriction, which is taking our energy, and so
Mm-hmm.
then we're feeling the constriction somewhere in our body. And
Mm-hmm.
this is why looking at holistically, a lot of these practices are less about fixing these individual places, and instead opening up
Yeah.
connection to flow. Like in the past, we've looked at strength as, oh, I've got to protect myself and I need to
Or
resist
a
and be
fight.
hard like a rock, or
Yeah.
yeah, fight or flight, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
our survival instincts.
Hmm.
When
Or freeze. I
or
freeze sometimes.
freeze. Yeah, so instinctually, we're designed to constrict in a way that's going to hold all those emotions in,
Yeah, and just
right?
preserve yourself. Because a lot of times when you're in like a stressful situation, at the bare minimum, you're just trying to preserve your own self,
Yeah,
whether or not so that you don't offend someone, maybe it's so that you don't feel hurt or like whatever it is. A
yeah.
lot of these are survival
Oh,
mechanisms.
yeah. And that's all you can think in the moment. You can't think about collateral damage
No,
or
or
emotional
breathing, like
impact.
forget about it. Don't you love it when people suggest to you, like when you're really stressed out, they're like, "Oh, don't forget to breathe," and you're like, "Yeah, don't you think I want to right now?"
Yeah.
But this is why it's all of this stuff is practice.
Mhm.
It's a lot of this stuff is identifying these feelings and these things because essentially you're taking your power back. I just think
Mhm.
about I had a lot of clients that really suffered from panic attacks and for me, when I was like thinking about it, it was really just, it was a focus of being so overwhelmed by situations and just like not wanting to deal with it. So I used to be probably still sometimes an avoider, like love avoiding that, right? But then what happens is this little ball that was this big is
Mhm.
now, and maybe it hasn't changed in real life, but in your mind, it's now become bigger and bigger and bigger. And now you're like, definitely don't want to like interact with that now.
Yeah.
But then you do,
Right.
and then it's okay, right?
It's so true. I mean, when we're hyper focusing, we're feeling an emotion that we don't want and a discomfort, we're naturally going to focus on it, right?
Yeah,
But as we focus on it, we're zeroing in, and that's all we can see. So it feels like it's so big and it's everything. And something
it's
about
everything.
it's everything, but it's everything because that's all I'm looking at. That's all I'm
Yeah,
focusing on, and I'm constricted.
yeah.
And if through these practices we're going to talk about when we relax and we breathe and we expand our awareness, then suddenly this pain that was everything because we're zeroed in, we back up and there's so much more. And it's actually so much smaller, which is why
Yeah.
when we are constricted, then dealing with, and this is where we're shifting our default of when we're feeling emotional wellness really comes from us resolving the emotions internally because it's
Hmm.
stuck in our body,
Self-sourcing, yeah.
self-sourcing, as opposed to that instant fight or flight reaction, which is let me fix it out there. And we're
Yeah.
trying to fix the emotion out there,
Hmm.
and that's not where it's starting. So we can amplify it, or we can
Yeah.
draw in more of it, or lose all of our energy. We're giving all our energy away to it.
Well, and I'm going to also point out too, if you're always like leaning on a friend or leaning on somebody to get advice about situations, you're not self-sourcing. And I will tell you, there are definitely going to be times in your life where nobody's going to be available to talk you through it.
Hmm.
And so these are all skill sets that the more that you practice, the better you'll be at being able to self-source, right? Because like again, people are going to be coming at you with like so many different perspectives, so many opinions. Everybody has opinions about how you should live your life, but it's you and your journey. It's nobody else's. So all you can do is take in all of this other information, but essentially you still got to keep putting it up against what you know to be true, you know? And so, and because
Right.
this is what I think about with advice too. It's like, you don't want to tune everybody out if they're saying something that maybe isn't in alignment with what you're thinking, because you're going to miss out on nuggets, right? You're going to miss out on some jewels. And so the idea is to be able to still listen and take in information, but use discernment to be able to
Right.
go, okay, so that has some truth in there. That doesn't, I don't agree with that part, but that does. Because I'll tell you what, and this goes with parents, this goes with friends, this goes with spouses or partners. Not everybody is going to be right all the time, and not everybody's going to be wrong all the time. So being able, and I think that society can use some work on being able to sit in the same room and have differing opinions, and still be able to, like, we need to work on being able to like communicate in ways that it's okay to have a different opinion. There's so many human beings on the planet. Not everybody's going to like
Yeah.
you, not everybody's going to agree with you, and that is how it should be.
I love that you said that because that shows how our own patterns with emotions translate into, social wellness and how we interact. Because that tendency when we feel something uncomfortable to constrict and close off and
Yeah.
protect ourselves, that's that same idea as opposed to being open. And it requires a lot of trust to feel
Mm.
safe and being open and flowing.
Hmm.
And
Trust in your own self to just go, hey, it might not be received the way I want it to be received. And
yeah.
people want to talk sometimes, and being able to just go, well, I said it with love. I said it with love. It was truthful, and
Mhm.
to just not like sweat the small stuff just
Yeah.
because somebody might not understand what you're saying and stuff.
It's okay to be aware. And
Mhm.
then we get to discern and then we get to filter. And that's what our body does with emotions, that if we're open to feeling and experiencing,
Mhm.
we can trust that what's not ours and not meant for us when we're not holding and attaching it, it's going to flow right out.
Yeah.
And we can discard it and then we can integrate the feelings that we want to have experience. And it's the
Yes.
same thing, you're right, with advice and with
Hmm.
information, to give ourselves permission to be aware and
Hmm.
allow that to come in and trust ourselves to discern what flows through us, and that
Yes.
what's truth will stay when we're open and our body can connect. And that's a great awareness from both of these,
Hmm.
perspectives that we come from, is really based on the idea that our body is designed to heal and to
Hmm.
come into balance and to reach homeostasis,
Yeah.
that it's evolving. And it's really, the only way it can be stopped is if we interfere or slow down the process,
Hmm.
or if we resist it, right? And so
Yeah.
if we trust our body, if we trust that we can hear things and we can learn,
Hmm.
and then as we're open, we'll have that discernment of truth, and
Yeah.
everything that comes in gets to be information to guide us.
Because it's all like you, and you keep saying it so well, like all of this is information, right? Like when you go out like into public, you're just like taking in information. You don't need to react to it. I feel like I've had to really learn that throughout the course of my life, is to like not immediately react, to like give space, right? And I think that
Mhm.
like, so this is why mindfulness, this is why meditation, this is why
Right.
breathing, this is why all of this matters with emotions, because all of this is actually just giving your brain space to respond versus react. Okay?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
to know that we're not responding purely from our amygdala, that is stress and programming and
Hmm.
survival, to pause and allow all the information
Yeah.
to be
Let your
taken and
brain be
integrated.
involved in it,
Hmm.
because I'll tell you, reactions usually lead to apologies later. Where you're like, okay, definitely didn't mean that, but I was being triggered. And
Yeah.
like I do want to say though, Trigger is definitely a buzzword currently. And I don't want us to get lost in maybe going, oh, you triggered me. That's a trigger. That's a trigger. Knowing your triggers is half the battle. But just remember, don't necessarily use it as an excuse to not grow. As because knowing your trigger allows you to now take the action to start diving into that trigger, right? Like yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I love that. Like
Mhm.
reimagining that word that maybe it's, it's a charge.
Yeah.
And a
Oh,
charge can be a
mm,
positive thing. It's like, oh, we've connected to something. There's
yes.
something in here. This is making me aware. There's a different vibration. There is a different sensation experience. It's information that
Hmm.
lets me know that either there's something for me to let go of and move out that's
Hmm.
stuck, or it's connecting me to something that's really beneficial
Hmm.
for me to amplify and call in. And
Yeah.
so I'm feeling a charge,
Hmm.
and kind of looking at that word is when we feel a charge to also know we feel a charge in here. Let me
Hmm.
pause, let me figure out and
Yeah, like what
identify
is
what's
it
going on
before I just
here,
start like,
and then
yeah.
deal with what's out
Yeah,
there.
it's
Yeah.
essentially getting all the details of the story before you just jump to conclusions. And don't you worry, sometimes I'm the first little bunny rabbit in there. But like
Such a cute bunny rabbit.
so the
Sparkly.
sparkly bunny rabbit. Because that's, and I'll be referring to this as we go on, but there are definitely negative thinking patterns, and one being jumping to conclusions because you're not actually gathering all the data, you're just jumping
Ooh,
in.
that's the Four Agreements.
Oh, I have read
Yeah.
that. Yes,
It's
that's a good
great.
book.
Don't make assumptions. Don't take things personal. And kind of what we talked about energetically, when you personalize it, you've just changed what's stuck in the river, and then it becomes personal, and then it's stuck when
Mhm.
often it's really not personal. It's our interpretation of a feeling.
Yeah.
And then don't make assumptions. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah, always do your best and then be impeccable with your word. And
Hmm.
the four agreements say if you do those four things, we eliminate most conflicts. And I think it's
Mm.
so true.
Hmm.
And that assumption one is such a big one
Hmm.
because we're going off limited information,
Hmm. Well, yeah.
especially.
And if you're in your emotions, like this is something, and it sounds callous sometimes, but it's for real. Not everything is about you. Like
Yeah.
literally, not
Maybe
everything's
none of
about
it.
you.
Maybe
And
none.
so like sometimes you might walk in a room and you're like, oh my God, everybody's looking at me. But in all actuality, no, they aren't. You might
Mhm.
think that they are, but they aren't. And because I have to tell you, if you're stuck in your own world, there's a good chance that many of the people that you are around are also stuck in their world. So like what might seem like gravity, like one of the most like terrible things that could ever happen, most people aren't even paying attention to you,
So
because
true.
they're stuck in their own world. And that's just kind of the reality of it. So, when in doubt, if you're ever feeling uncomfortable in a room, just maybe say to yourself, you know, it's not about me.
Mhm.
Nobody even is noticing I'm even here, right?
That's the power of self-sourcing. If you walk
Hmm.
in the room and you decide how you want to feel
Hmm.
and you give yourself that first, then you're
Oops.
going to notice more reasons to feel that way are going to show up in our lens. And looking at again from a kind of a quantum perspective is that, things that are stuck inside of us are also reflecting this
Yeah,
vibration around us. And
it's
we
definitely a vibration.
and we look at it as like here you have a torus field of energy that's flowing through you, the earth when we ground that's coming from source, it's moving through our energy centers. And when we have these blocks in us that are stuck,
Mm.
then it creates this wobble. And it's almost like dirt on
Oh,
your
that's a good
lens,
visual.
this wobble. So you don't have a clear lens. And that wobble means that everything you're looking through this lens.
I wait, what I think of is
Mhm.
when you're looking at fire and you
Yeah,
see that like wobble of like right, that
distortion.
distortion, right? That's what
Yeah.
I vision when you were talking about this.
Totally,
Hmm.
totally. And so you're going to see everything through that and perceive it that way because you're already feeling it. And the
Mm.
brain wants
Yeah,
to go, what I see is why I'm feeling this. That's why I'm feeling this.
yeah.
That's why I'm
And
feeling
it
this.
has to be about me. It has to be like what this is when
Yeah.
it's just a story you're telling yourself.
And then later you talk to someone and they didn't use that tone at
Oh
all that
no.
you thought they used, and
Yeah.
they didn't look at you that
Yeah, they're
way.
like,
It's
oh,
just,
actually, I was looking at your earrings because I love them. And you're
yeah.
like, oh my God, my hair is a mess. They can see it. And you're like
Right.
fixing it, but really they just liked your earrings.
Yeah, it's like moving through that. We're kind of moving through two different timelines because what we're feeling is based off of what's already in us, right? What we've
Mm-hmm.
stored, and then what we're seeing out here is in real time.
Mm.
And just so to make that separation a little bit, just because
That
I'm
one.
to be skeptical of the feeling, just because I'm feeling this doesn't mean that this is reflective of what is happening right
Ah,
now.
this is because it's so easy. And I'm going to tell you what, like, I feel like when sometimes we go through, I mean, maybe it's just me, but like when I go through maybe tougher emotions that aren't as like bright and light, I isolate, right? Because I really like being able to get my bearings around like what's happening. But what also happens is it's just you and your brain together for quite some time. And I'm a
Yeah.
little ruminator, so I love thinking about it, especially if it has no closure. Love
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I won't stop. And so then you've also, so you have to be careful because you might inadvertently create this whole story that isn't real at all.
Isn't our brain so good at that?
Yeah,
And it's
loves it.
funny, it's like giving, giving someone that's just coming in, all right, giving a maybe like a computer programmer the job of being the human resources
Mm,
person. Like we're giving our brain so much power
hmm
when we're not really recognizing what it's good at. And what it's
mm,
good at is
hmm
analyzing data
mm,
and reflecting back to us exactly where we're at. And
hmm
it's like our brain is the ultimate cheerleader, isn't it?
hmm
And it's letting us know where we're
It can
vibrating.
be.
It can
It
be.
also could be our biggest hater sometimes if you let it be it.
Right. Well, it's going to reflect back where we're at. And we love our brain because it really helps us do things and it's
Mm-hmm.
helping us function and speak.
Mm-hmm.
But don't you notice like when you're feeling bad about yourself, so you're vibrating in a low place,
Mm-hmm.
all the thoughts you're accessing from your brain are agreeing with you, like
Yeah.
telling you why you feel that way. Well, it's
Mm.
because this, because of that. It's just whenever we go to our mind, it's going to amplify exactly that. And so then it takes kind of getting out of our mind into our body, changing our state, because then when you feel good, doesn't your mind, like your self-talk changes, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I did
Yeah.
great, like, oh no, it's okay, like things are for the best. Like when you relax and you
Mm-hmm.
use mindfulness, suddenly your perspective is different
Mm-hmm.
and your brain's different. It's like, oh, they don't really mean that, or it's not really that way. It's just the ultimate cheerleader that wherever you're at is going to say, yes, you're right, yes, you're
Yeah.
right, and this is why, and this is
Yeah.
why. And that's so helpful, I think, to
Mm-hmm.
understand.
And I also wanted to say that, you know, it's okay to talk nice about yourself. It's okay to be your own cheerleader. Don't get it twisted. It's not, you're
Yes.
not pompous. You're not, what are the self-absorbed or anything. No, if, because like there's this, Snoop Dogg had this one speech that he was giving, and he was like, I want to thank myself. I want to thank myself for waking up every day at 5 and doing that. He was like, I want to thank myself for showing up. But that's the vibe. That's the vibe.
Yeah.
It's okay because what you talk, if so, this is also something that I want to say is that don't talk about things you don't want to have happen because when you talk, you're essentially putting it out into the ether. So if you're like, God, I really hope I don't fail that test. No need. Don't say that. Don't say that because you don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
Say, like I would really love to get an A. It's
Mhm.
just a simple thing of just like changing it and it makes all the difference, right? Like where if you always are focusing on what you don't want to have happen and all if your energy flows, your energy goes where your energy flows, then that's going to have happen because your body doesn't know what to think. It can't read between the lines.
Uh-huh.
If you just keep thinking every day, I'm stupid or like I suck at math, right? Then how could you possibly expect that your brain's going to think that you're ever going to be good at math? You're like keeping yourself kind of in this, you're putting yourself in your own box. And so, I like to say this you don't limit yourself because the world is going to try to limit you. Don't help it, right? Like,
Oh, I love that you said that.
mhm.
And that's exactly what I mean by cheerleader.
Yeah.
It's really it's got our back. It will just reflect back. It very neutral. I mean, our
hmm
brain is so neutral. Our
hmm
body is neutral. It's like, oh, this is what you want. That's what you want. Let
Yeah.
me give you more of that. Let
Yeah.
me create more of that. Let me give you more reasons to feel that way. And
Yes.
we'll filter. Because think about all the information that's coming at us. Like
hmm
4 to 500,000 bits of information
Yeah.
coming in, and our body, mind has to filter all of that.
hmm
So it's going to filter it just the same way it does in technology, right? When it
hmm
it it produces the marketing that it
hmm
thinks that we want
hmm
based off of where we're putting our time and energy online.
hmm
Oh, you're looking this up, you want more of this.
hmm
Let's bring this into your field. I
hmm
love technology, so reflective of
hmm
that, of really thinking, yeah, what do I want to feel about myself? What do I want to
So
experience?
this is a perfect segue into I was going to talk about what's my question? My question is about how emotional wellness ties into mental health. So one of the things that I am a huge proponent of that I focus on a lot is emotional vocabulary.
Mm.
Okay, emotional vocabulary, scream it from the mountaintops. There is an app that I use that I love. It's called How We Feel, and the app, it looks like a rainbow heart. But the whole idea of it is, if you like, ask yourself, how do you feel right now? How you doing? If someone saw you on the street and like, how are you? How are you, Jody?
I'm hanging out with you, Robin. I feel great.
Yes. And I feel good, right? Okay, so I want everybody to kind of pay attention to what their default answer is, right? We have all these like pseudo conversations, these salutations that we have in society where we say, hey, and then we just naturally, and people go, how are you? And you just have this like reoccurring, maybe five things that you say. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm anxious, the usual suspects. But if you are only using those vocabulary words, then those emotions are going to be the only emotions that you're telling your body that you're feeling, right? So the wider your emotional vocabulary, the more that you can actually get to know how you're truly feeling. Because, are you anxious or are you actually kind of excited? There's a lot
Right.
of crossover between certain emotions that are really close, but they're not the same, right? And so it's a really good practice. Learn a new emotional vocabulary word. Re-look up a definition of a vocabulary word that you actually think you already know. Like I love relearning different definitions because I go, oh, like do I actually feel that way or do I actually feel this way based on the definition? And this is a really important thing in mental health, like to be able to, so your emotional wellness is tied to how you actually feel. If you don't know how you actually feel, then how could you really work on your emotional wellness? So for me, like one of the very first things to do is get to know, like maybe pick a word of a day, where it's like, and I like working backwards because sometimes, people, and especially if you go into therapeutic sessions, they might ask you, like, how do you feel today? What I like doing when I'm like talking with my clients to expand their emotional vocabulary and with myself is I work backwards. So maybe I will ask, like, when was the last time you felt joy? Right. And then
Mhm.
it's easier because, I had a client one time, they were talking to me about like, oh, they were so anxious all weekend. They had the terrible weekend. And so we did this emotional vocabulary thing where I started actually asking them, when was the last time you felt these different emotions? And come to find out, they were like, oh, I felt that yesterday. Oh, I felt that emotion yesterday too. And so when they first told me, they clumped everything under anxiety. Okay, that gives me anxiety. Just putting everything under that, right? And so,
Yeah.
so then when we actually started like figuring out that, oh no, you actually had so many other emotions yesterday that weren't actually like anxiety. They were all these other things. So it takes the power away from the words that we're using, right? Like if this is how panic attacks I feel happen because you're putting all of these emotions, you're like, oh, it's all under the category of anxiety. So instead of you being able to go, no, actually, I feel a little nervous because I'm about to go speak in front of people. No, I'm actually a little excited because, people received me well.
Mhm.
Like being able to like pay attention to the nuance and the actual definitions of things will actually allow you to take your power back, which helps with emotional wellness because I feel like a lot of, struggle happens when we feel powerless, when we feel we're just at the mercy of like any emotion that just comes up. And that happens all the time.
Mhm.
It depends on how has emotions been modeled in your life thus far,
Mhm.
right? Like how did your parents like show emotions, you
Right.
know?
Right. Oh, I love that. I think even reimagining the way we look at emotions so that we're not giving it so much power. And it's making me think about, emotions are the experience of our body interacting with us and
Mm,
information, and it's energy, right? That's
mm,
vibrating.
mhm,
And there's only so many different outlets of emotion for your body to translate what it's experiencing into. And looking at this vocabulary that we can think as we're going through transformation and we experience some emotions of thinking, oh, that's the way I used to feel, or this is that emotion. Oh, I'm still in grief and I'm
mhm,
still in this, because we're relating it to a similar sensation or feeling.
mhm.
And if we can give it a new name, then we've
Yes.
empowered ourselves of we're not going back into old patterns.
Yes.
We're experiencing the exchange of energy. Of
Mhm,
sometimes, like I mentioned before, entropy, sometimes it's things moving out and releasing. Sometimes it's really just being hungry, or
mhm.
and
Hangry. I
hangry,
worked in bars and restaurants for a long
hangry.
time, and I tell you that is real.
Yeah, like it could, who knows? I mean, sometimes it's from the food that we're eating, sometimes it's how we're reacting to our environment, and
Yeah.
looking at things from a quantum perspective that we're all energy. There's more space in between ourselves than even matter. So our energy is interacting all the time. And
Mhm,
we're like conductors, we're communicating on an energetic level all the time. That
mhm.
how do we even know that what we're feeling is like, maybe it's just going into the category box of, oh, this is anxiety or this is
Yeah.
this, and it might just be this energy that we're moving through. So like I like to reimagine it um as a sense, right? So
Mhm,
what if we looked at emotions as a smell, because it's
mm,
something we're experiencing, something we're
mhm,
feeling, and it's
mhm,
giving us information about what we're experiencing. And it's interesting how we'll identify personally, like
mhm,
we'll personalize what we're feeling emotionally,
mhm.
even though it might come from a variety of sources or
Yeah.
be given a charge from a variety of sources.
Mhm.
And yet we don't do that with smells.
Mm,
Right? Like think about it.
insightful.
Think about it. Like let's say you walk into a farm.
Mhm. Nice. Love
Let's
it.
talk about farms. Um, you're in a cow pasture and you're smelling cow pies. Does that
Mhm.
change how you feel about yourself?
No, I just think that I'm close to a zoo.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, we don't
I'm
take
like, oh,
that.
smells like a zoo.
It smells like a zoo. We don't take it personal. It's just
Yeah.
information. Is it uncomfortable? Yeah. Are you experiencing the sensation of it? Does it impact how you feel internally? Sure. It's not good. It's
Hmm.
uncomfortable.
Hmm.
If you walk into a rose garden, does that change the way you feel about yourself? You're smelling roses?
No, it just makes me smile.
Yeah, it's a smell you like. And so it gives us choices. With the other one, you can walk out of the cow pasture
Yeah.
if you want.
You can
You can,
remove yourself because it's a choice, right? That's
yeah.
another thing, like, and I'm guilty of this too, but you're going to realize as you go through life, you're going to be like, oh, that person made me feel this way. That person made, and at the end of the day, they actually didn't make you feel any kind of way because it is your choice for the feelings that come up because they might
Mhm.
be linked to things that it might be, a straight direct connection to a past memory that triggers. It could be, and
Right.
smells trigger things. Like, okay, so
Right.
so this is my advice if you are trying to get to know what your triggers or like what your emotions are, right? It is to do some detective work. So this is always what I would suggest to my clients, which would be take like a weekend, right? Take a weekend, and then I want you to write down, so let's say for me, when I get triggered, my tell in my body is my cheeks get really hot. And so they turn really red. And so that's my tell. That's how I know I'm being triggered, even if I can say in my mind, no, I'm fine. I'm like, my cheeks are all red. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. But so what I would do is for that weekend, anytime my cheeks would get red, I would
Mhm.
write down what was happening around that time. And then you do that for all weekend. And
Mhm.
then at the end, because you're just gathering data, and then at the end of the weekend, go back and start looking for patterns, start looking for things, because then what that will do, it will give you a place to start. Because you might think it's getting home after work or getting home after school. It might be like, okay, so it's just being at home, right? But really, it might be that it's when you're asked questions and
Mhm.
it's when you're not ready to answer or you don't really want to talk or you just want to be in your room without any like conversation for the first like 20 minutes, right? You
Right.
can start pinpointing it because you might just think it might be one person. You might be like, oh, my my partner, my boyfriend or girlfriend like every time they say that to me, it like sends me. But it might not actually be that person doing that. It might actually be like you just like to be sovereign. You like to make your own idea, like have your own choices, and you don't
Yeah.
like being told what to do, right? So it's like,
That's so true. You don't know what
yeah,
associations your brain's making
yeah,
because it's always wanting to pattern and
yeah.
categorize things. It's like Joe Dispenza says, neurons that fire together wire together.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're right. It could be the smell, it could be their tone of voice,
Voice, tone, tone.
it could be the specific words that are being
Yeah.
used, and they just transport you right back to where you first had that feeling. And
Hmm.
that's what you're responding to and
Hmm.
reacting to, which
Yeah.
is another reason to let go of what's happening around you and take it to the body because there might be associations we don't know. And yet, if you can find where it's in your body and what you're feeling and
Yeah.
let yourself feel it,
Yeah.
then whatever those associations are, it's going to be easier to clear it because it doesn't go away until we do feel it, like we
Yeah.
said in the beginning.
Yeah. All right. So let's ask a mutual question, right? Okay. So what does self-regulation look like in both mental health and energy work? Do you want to start?
Oh, yes.
Self-regulation.
I love it. Yeah, self-regulation would be, and it's probably similar, but it's regulating the nervous system. So it's moving from a stress response, which is where we talked about we're dysregulated and our energy centers or chakras might be locked up. That dysregulated means energy isn't flowing
Mm-hmm.
through the body in a harmonized way.
Mm-hmm.
And when it locks up and when it's not harmonizing, all we're accessing are our conditioning patterns, our thoughts, everything up in here in our
Mm-hmm.
subconscious, and we're ruminating just in
Mm-hmm.
this information. And so regulation comes to shifting into our parasympathetic or
Yeah.
our relaxed state. What it means is relaxing those energy centers,
Mhm.
releasing constriction, and
Releasing
creating
control.
yeah, and yeah, centering in our own, grounding
Mm-hmm.
and restoring. I mean, it's about restoring energetic flow. That as we do that,
Mm-hmm.
then our body is taking in all the information. We have access to more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as we're moving it through our heart, and what we
Mm-hmm.
consider our higher mind, then regulated means that also as we're open and connected, then we can harmonize with nature, with our natural so our,
Yes.
our higher our higher expanded state. And then we're clearing the wobbles in the lens,
Yes.
but we're going to have a clear perspective that when we're
Mm-hmm.
regulated, it means we're present and aware
Mm-hmm.
in the current present moment
Yeah.
to what's going on.
Yeah. And and like the Venn diagram, right? This is why these conversations are so good because you're going to see similarities. It's like we're speaking the same we're talking about the same stuff but with different language, right?
Yeah.
So like emotional regulation in mental health, right? Yeah, it's being able to bring it back to the body, like I said, is the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
Like figure out what your tell is. Is it in your stomach? Is it in your cheeks, right? And then it's being aware of your emotions so that you can give space, like we were talking about before, so you can get out of your frontal lobe and you can go into more of your critical thinking spaces. So you can take that breath and give yourself some time. Like one of the things that I would highly recommend if we were combining us into kind of like a fluid thing for emotional regulation would be so identifying how you actually feel. That's again where emotional vocabulary comes in. But then after you identify how you feel, do maybe some breath work because
Yes.
like the breath gives you space. Breathing essentially is just giving you space, right? That's why you breathe. It's so that you can have some space to get your brain to be able to engage with the situation at hand versus just like immediately like reacting, right? So emotional regulation is really needed because you're going to see, I know if we talk about men and women, it's maybe considered a negative to be emotional, but I'm going to tell you what's also emotion: lashing out, angry outbursts,
Mhm.
like throwing things and stuff.
Well, also if we don't honor, feel our emotions, our body can translate a different way. And what
Mm,
I experienced, feeling like I wasn't allowed or safe to express my emotion,
mm,
it became kind of psychosomatic and it's real, but it becomes physical dysfunction in the body and can manifest as chronic pain,
Yes.
as other
Especially when you're
sickness.
older. That's
Yeah.
one thing. And like when you're dealing with older adults, especially in if we just look at the generations now, you're going to find in therapeutic settings, many older people, they don't talk about their emotions, but they talk about the pain in their body. And that's actually
Right.
how they're talking about their emotions because they never gained the vocabulary when they were younger. Anyway,
Right.
continue. Mhm.
Yeah, and so bringing breath, as you said, space, it also brings our awareness from what's outside of us, inside us, and then we can direct that energy to feeling it. And yeah, it's been amazing to recognize all the pain that I've had, that there
Mm,
has always been
mhm,
emotion behind it, that we can feel it. And the mindfulness practices allow us to access, like we talked about, the lower vibration of emotion and the higher vibration of emotion, that when we're regulated and things are flowing, then what's not ours has a pathway where it can flow
mm,
out. It's grounding, we're releasing
mhm.
the energy, and then we can access as we focus. Now we can access more of those emotions we want to feel
Yes.
and fill up the space. That we look at that in quantum science as a universal law of vacuum. That
Mm,
space wants to be filled. And that's
mhm,
why it's easy for us to draw on the same patterns, even when we've healed.
mm.
It's easy to go back because there's a pathway there, a resonance and a familiarity.
We call it systems. So like something that would be like a family system would be like, this is how I think about it. Like, you're an adult, you've been an adult for quite some time, right? And then you go back home for like Thanksgiving or something, and it's like this orbit. All of a sudden you get sucked back into these same
Yeah.
patterns, and you're like, why is this so terrible? You're like looking at your parent and you're like, I'm an adult now. Why are you talking to me like this? But it's because there's all these systems in place that you just naturally get sucked back into.
Yeah, there's
Mhm.
resonance and the body wants to fill up the space and the patterns. It's very uncomfortable when we let go
Mm,
with the spaciousness. And the breath allows us to fill the space and almost kind of feel comfortable within ourselves with that space.
mm,
And then as we're flowing aligned, then we feel naturally safer to have a new experience, to fill that up
mm.
with something that we
And
actually
something
desire.
new. And I
Yeah,
think that that's what it is. It's like being able to replace scenarios that you don't like being in with scenarios that you do like being in. I think that this is a really good thing to talk about is if you don't know what will make you happy or you don't know what emotion you're trying to feel, well, then how is anybody else supposed to know? Like you are the person that is driving this boat.
yeah,
Even if you go to therapy, I think that sometimes people have maybe not quite the right approach when they go to therapy. They're maybe just going, hey, I'm going to a therapist. And so now you're going to tell me what's going on with me. And so again, you're looking outside of yourself. But really, a therapist should be looked at as like a partner, a someone who's a cheerleader that's going to help you like in your passenger seat, that it's like, okay, so where do you want to go? What are you trying to do? Where,
mhm,
but if you don't know, then this is a good place to start is going, okay, so I definitely know that I don't like feeling what I'm feeling right now, but what am I trying to feel?
mhm,
And then like we said, located in the body, see where if you say happiness, where do you feel? Like for me, I see yellow and immediately comes like from my heart space, right? Like, and
uh-huh.
so knowing that that's the energy that I'm trying to tune back into. That's the feeling that I'm trying to achieve. Like really knowing what all the different feelings feel like, where they're located in your body, and then doing energy work to try to start moving those things, like because you might just feel it stuck. And
Yeah.
that's how mind body connection, right? That's how some chronic diseases start happening, where you have like, I got adult acne. I no acne my whole life, and then in my 30s I got acne, and I was
You
just
got it
like,
for the first time in your 30s?
it was not cute. Every time I went to the mirror, it was like I would wake up in the morning, I was like, who am I gonna look like today? And it was just
Oh,
crazy, and makeup doesn't work. And so, but that was chronic stress. That was me not dealing with something that I needed to, and it will manifest and show you. Because like some of the stuff you do is stuck
Oh,
in your
yeah.
body, and
The
so you can't see
body,
it.
it loves us so much. It's
Mm.
going to bring it to light. And it is interesting to see the ways that it does that. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a physical manifestation.
Mm.
Sometimes it's an injury. I had something stuck. I had these emotions stuck in my stomach. That's where I loved to stuff it when I was younger.
Mm.
And then I kind of ending up with these stomach issues. And I had
Oh.
stomach surgery. I tore my abdomen,
Oh
I
my
had
God.
hernias, I had laparoscopy for my gallbladder. It's just like my body's like, here, this is where everything is, and this is where we want to heal and where we want to address it. So whether it's
Mm.
physical or whether it's going to vibrate in a way that draws in a situation to
Mm.
let you know that if we look at it with one of my friends here said, the logic goggles. That we
Ah.
look at, all right, what's coming up? What is my body wanting to show me? That we find a more loving way to look at it
Mm.
is this charge of, oh, what is this emotion showing up? What is this sensation showing up? What is here for me to look at, that we get to be really conscious
Mm-hmm.
with our experience, and we get to know because we've learned to avoid discomfort because we don't like it, right?
Because discomfort is
It's
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. And when we know that feeling that discomfort and moving through it,
Mm-hmm.
on the other side of it,
Mm-hmm.
like traveling up that vibrational stream,
Yeah.
that feeling our grief and moving through that is exactly what
Mm-hmm.
is going to open up space for joy,
Yeah.
actually leading to more of what we want to feel,
Mm-hmm.
moving through our anxiety and stress. We get to feel peace.
Yeah. And being uncomfortable, you're supposed, this is a part of this earth experience. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable. I
Yeah.
feel like many of us try to avoid. I've noticed that maybe the younger generations maybe tend to avoid discomfort as much as possible. Totally get it. It's not great. But I tell you, some of the most growth and learning happens through discomfort.
It's our guide. It
Yeah.
lets you know, and
Yeah.
well, and new
Yeah.
pathways, like understanding our nervous system, that every
Hmm.
time something's new and it's not familiar, we're going against the grain, there's going to be discomfort,
Yeah.
even when it's something we
Even
want,
if it's something that you like.
especially when it's
Oh,
something we
oh
want,
my God. I
we've
feel
never
like,
had.
yeah. And because there's this, there's a lot of programming for like fear, like the fear of the unknown and stuff like that. That's why being able to go back inside and connect to your own self and go, okay, so how am I actually feeling? It might appear to everybody else that this is not the best decision, but then actually going in and self-sourcing, going, but how do I feel about it? Because there are just going to be some lessons that you're going to have to go through life that everybody's going to tell you that's a stupid idea, and it might be, but
Yeah.
you won't know that until you try it. And so that's like the thing. It's like being able to have discernment where you're not going to like mess up your whole life by like trying things, but you're at least going to be able to have like some sort of adventure in you where you're like, okay, this is a healthy risk. I'm going to be vulnerable in this situation, and I'm going to try it out. And the worst case scenario is like maybe I suck at it in front of people for the first time. But I tell you what, now you have that experience under your belt. So when you try that a second time, you're now going to have an advantage to all those who didn't try it the first time, because now this is your second time trying it. So the
Mhm.
more you put yourself out there to try new things and experience new things, it can be scary. And yeah, you might get some negative. The first couple times you do something, it might not be the best display or performance, but you know what? That's okay, because you got to start somewhere, right? Like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, it's like, from an energy pathway, let's say you want to dig a trench, you want to dig like a little river going down your yard, or you have one already and you want to dig a new path. The water's going to want to continue to flow down where it's the path of least resistance, right? And
Mm.
so at first, you're going to have to really dig this trench and there's going to be a slow flow going. But yeah, after you have some positive experiences and evidence, then that survival brain goes, okay, I can survive. This is
Yes.
possible. And it becomes more and more and more possible.
Mhm.
And that's why a lot of the practices that we are going to be sharing and where we bridge the gap, that you find this in mental
Mhm.
wellness as well as in energy medicine, is a practice of visualization, because
Mhm.
that's how we
Mhm.
do it. If you haven't experienced something, that's how we create resonance with a new experience we've never had.
Mhm.
And that's why you were saying earlier, it's okay to tell yourself great things and
Yes.
how you want to feel about yourself,
Mhm.
because if the brain
Mhm.
doesn't have any experience of familiarity with this, then it's difficult to create that experience and have resonance. So that's a way that we can
Love this.
speed up and make the
Mhm.
process even easier, because our brain can't distinguish between something we've experienced and something that we are visualizing. We know that from
Yes.
like what you're saying earlier about watching
Mhm.
shows and then having emotional
Yeah.
releases. what we see, we believe is our body is reacting as if it's actually happening.
Yeah. Well, that's why your body, you can fake it. They say fake it till you make it. It's true. If you're not in a good mood, smile, right? Your body doesn't know. If you're smiling, your body's like, "Oh, I guess I'm happy." Like it really does make a difference. Like putting on a brave face, that does work because at the end of the day, you have to remember I don't know, but your body is just a vehicle. It's just moving you around. It's just getting you from point A to point B. So you kind of need to tell it what to do. You need to engage with it. And yeah, you need to self-soothe in many cases. How are we
Yeah,
looking on time?
I think we're about ready to wrap it up.
Okay, so
Yeah, let's go ahead.
okay, let's see. I want to ask you, the audience, here's a little question for you all to think about. So think about the last time you had a really strong emotional reaction. Where did you feel it in your body? Did the energy feel stuck? Was it heavy? Was it moving? We'd love to hear your thoughts. DM us and comment your experience. And yeah, I just wanted to say, just in closing, like this is such a deep category, emotional wellness,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's that we'll probably have more conversations like with this, but as you can see, there's so much crossover in how mental health works and like how it's actually sustainable over long periods of time. And much of this can go back to energy work. It's the nuances. It's the creating space for yourself to breathe. It's the creating space so your brain can be involved in the situation versus just you constantly acting and feeling like you're at the mercy of life happening to you. And so hopefully this conversation was gave you a little bit of maybe things to think about, and knowing that these two worlds, psychology and energy work, are not so different. They're actually intertwined. And the more you get to understand yourself when it comes to emotions, the more you get to really kind of own your power in the world and walk with that confidence and that self-esteem, because you get it. You have more control over how you interact with life.
I love it. We go from being victims of circumstance to
Mhm.
conscious creators.
Yes, I
Our
love
experience.
this. All right. Well, we hope this conversation sparks some new insights for you. Emotional wellness is a powerful foundation for self-growth, and understanding the connection between energy and emotions can open up so many possibilities for healing and alignment. So this is Cerebral Sparkles, and we look forward to you tuning in next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.